Good morning and a very, very warm welcome to everyone on this Friday. I hope everyone's had the coffee and they're sitting and ready to hear from our wonderful sponsors. We have each of the sponsors here who will be giving a rundown for us on the latest research and developments that they're running through. And it's a real shame that we're not all there in person and we can walk by the wonderful stands and have a chat in person, but we have everyone here. And so we will be hearing from them shortly. Just a quick note, there's a chat function. I don't know if you found it. If you feel free to please use that today, we can have a chat going on. If anyone's got any questions as well, there is a Q&A button. Please click on that and we will do our best to make sure that those questions are answered at the end of the session. So to begin with, I'm going to introduce you to our resident medical advisor, Professor Brian Kennon, who has been at these conferences for, I don't know how many years you've been doing this for, Brian, but he's a face that people who've been here before will recognise. You have so many different titles, Brian. If I sat here and listed all of them, I'd be filling up the entire talk, so I won't go through everything, but you're the National Lead for Diabetes in Scotland, the chair of the Scottish Diabetes Improvement Plan, and numerous other things. Oh my goodness, very highly qualified man that I'm going to pass over to now, who can introduce all of our lovely speakers. And as I say, please use the chat function and the Q&A function as well. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Good morning, everybody. I've got to say, video is not great for a bald man in terms of the light on the top of his head, but thanks to so many of you for joining, particularly early on a Friday morning. And as Emma says, I'm one of the diabetes consultants in Glasgow, and we've set up in Scotland an innovation and technologies group because we're mindful that quite often these technological advances are slow to get to the NHS and by default people with diabetes, and we're trying to see how we streamline and improve that process. It's fair to say I want to first of all start by thanking everybody involved with Friends for Life, the trustees and all the volunteers and the people who support it, because I think this is an excellent meeting. As Emma says, it's a real shame we can't be in person, because the whole idea of this was going to be a session that everybody could attend and then get a chance to have an interactive session with the industry partners in the meeting. The next group I'd like to thank are actually the sponsors, because actually without them then running meetings like this would be a major challenge. But I'd also like to thank them because I firmly believe that as a diabetes community we are strongest when we work together, and that includes persons with diabetes, the NHS and medical staff, and also our industry partners, because many of the advances that are ongoing and many of the improvements in diabetes care are because of that collaboration and because of the research and development that happens with our industry sponsors. So we thought this would be a really nice opportunity for our 5 industry sponsors to be able to pitch their wares, if you like, and to highlight some of the recent advances that they've been working on, and also to give you a bit of a taster so that you can maybe pick up some of the discussion in the chat rooms over the weekend and talk about things in a bit more detail. It's worthwhile a bit of a disclaimer. We are encouraging you all to answer the Q&A function or the chat function, but we need to stay away from individual sort of clinical decision making. So it's just as a highlight that we can't get too individualized for some of the queries, but we will try and answer as many as we can. So we're going to have each of the 5 sponsors given a 5-minute presentation, and we're being very, very strict on the timings here. And then that should give us plenty of time at the end to run through a Q&A. And as I say, I would encourage you all to use the chat function to be able to help support that and facilitate that. So we're going alphabetical. So up first is Nikki Copeland from Abbott. So it'll be interesting to hear about the ongoing developments from Abbott and some of the things that we should look forward to in the future. So thanks, Nikki.
I believe there's going to be a little video run first, Glenn.
Our technical team are working on that presently, and the video will be with you soon.
Yes,
okay, right. You just help me for 2 seconds. Good morning, everybody. Oh,
Nikki, in fairness, we only got the volume towards the end there. Would you like us to run through that again?
It's okay, Brian. It probably you've been blessed with not having to listen to the music. It's something that's embedded in my hearing it so often. I think the general gist of it was there. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nikki Copeland, is in relationship with Abbott Diabetes Care. People with diabetes should have the freedom to enjoy a full and active life, and now focusing on making breakthrough technology accessible and approachable for you all. Our groundbreaking sensing technology is revolutionising how people monitor their glucose and providing healthcare teams with more data to drive better informed treatment decisions. And you can see from the video there that we're very proud to launch Freestyle Library 2 with the alarm function earlier this year. So please do visit the virtual booth. I'd love to see you and explore the resources we've got available. We've got some great resources there as well for parents or stroke carers or people that are looking after children with type 1 diabetes. If you have any questions at all, get in touch with us. There's an email at the bottom. It says email your question, and I'm around all weekend. Be more than happy to take any of your questions. But have a great conference, and I think, as Emma said, look forward to meeting you all in person next year.
Nikki, you did very well there to keep that to well under 5 minutes. So we should have played your video again.
No pro, Brian, that's what it is.
Yeah, what I was going to say is you've got a slight bandwidth issue there, so you were cutting out a wee bit. But hopefully that should be enough to still support any Q&A that comes Abbott's way as part of the discussion. So I'm just going to keep running through the speakers actually, and then that'll give us a chance to have more discussion at the end. Was there anything else you wanted to add at this stage, Nikki? No,
just it'd be lovely if you do take time just to pop by the virtual booth. I know it's not quite the same as saying hello in person, but if you've got any questions at all, feel free just to pop them to me over the weekend, or your opportunity here now as well, Brian.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So without further ado, we'll move on to advanced therapeutics, and we've got Tom, who's going to provide us an update from their perspective. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining and having me. We're really happy to be here. I will, if you don't mind, share a presentation with you just to provide a backdrop to what we're talking about. We're here over this weekend to talk about predominantly our Dana-I insulin pump, the new insulin pump launched at the beginning of this year, and its connection to CAM-APS, but to also discuss the importance of interoperability and what we think is going to be the future of diabetes technology, and in particular, obviously, our devices. So the Dana-I insulin pump, as I say, brought about this year. If we can move to the next slide, fantastic. Improving on our previous models. You may or may not know that we have been involved in clinical studies predominantly around closed loop, and plenty of them with University Cambridge, for about 10 years or so. And the Dana-I is a result of iteration on iteration coming from the results of those studies, which we're more than happy to share the details of in our longer form sessions over the weekend. This pump, predominantly, the difference involves its inner workings, its Bluetooth capabilities, and its second circuit board, second computing system designed specifically to double check and fact check the algorithm's workings with it. So it's very much a closed loop centric pump, housing Bluetooth 5.0 to work with the very fastest and latest devices to really ensure that we get the best possible results from any algorithm that we're working with. Crucially, we get the full pump functionality with or without the smartphone. So although we're very excited to be in a closed loop world and working towards that goal, obviously we need to maintain standard pump technology and efficiency as well. So the pump itself can be controlled from its own body. You can see the screen and buttons there. We have a free of charge app that's available on iOS and Android that can be used as a remote control in the first instance. And then obviously we can take that a step further and start introducing automated insulin delivery systems as well. The pumps remain really light. It's really important to us that they're as small as they can be while still housing 300 units. But really importantly is that they're light as possible, so we can sort of forget that we're wearing them ideally. The AnyDana app that we have looks a bit like this. So we are aware, and one of the things that we can be discussing over the weekend is availability of these closed loop systems, how we get started, the practicalities of all the different devices and all the ducks that you need to line up. But between then and now, or now and then, we can be using the AnyDana app simply to remote control the pump and hopefully provide an element of discretion and convenience in the meantime. So everything that you can do with your pump is possible to be done on the remote control app, other than the refill process, so the priming, which involves touching the pump anyway. So we really do think it's sort of the logical next step in convenience and making things as simple as possible for managing pump therapy. And then we come on to the sort of pièce de résistance, the CAM APS. So we're really proud to be working with CAM Diab. As I say, we've been involved with them for the last 10 years plus. And we, unfortunately, the launch date of CAM APS occurred in March 2020. It was slightly overshadowed in the news, as you may imagine. But it's here. We have lots of people using it and increasing numbers every month. And we'd love to talk to you about the exacts of how it works and what you need to do to get started. So yeah, I would implore that you visit our virtual booth, which is available to you, where you can look at some videos we've put up there, lots of documentation, PDFs and the like of all of the systems, some possible other interoperable connectivities that we have in the pipeline. They're also listed up there, as well as the links to all of our virtual sessions during your breaks over the weekend, where we hope to go into much more detail. But thank you very much. I'll leave it there and wish you a good conference and hope to see you soon.
Gee whiz, I'm very impressed here at people behaving within the 5-minute time window. I thought it was going to have to be a disciplinarian, or indeed Emma would have to be one. So that's great, Tom. Thank you very much. That's a really useful update. And as you said, the launch was slightly overshadowed by other events in the world, shall we say?
Yeah.
So again, we'll keep the questions till the end. I've put a wee chat function in there, just encouraging people to join online and ask any of the key questions they'd like to ask. So next it will be James, who's going to give us an update from Dexcom. Thanks, James.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be back here at the T1 Today Friends for Life conference once again. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who's organized and been involved with making the event happen once again, as well as all the sponsors as well. I know it takes a lot to make this event happen, and with the switch to virtual on short notice as well, just bravo, to be honest, for making it happen. And it's all been so seamless so far. I hope everyone's really excited to get going with the weekend and all the sessions involved. What we'll go through here, just to give you, I guess, a little bit of a teaser. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of information around what the Dexcom G6 CGM system is and what it can do for you. And then I'll take you through what we have planned in our sessions this week for you all. And then just a little bit around the support available to anyone and everyone that's either interested, curious, or already using the Dexcom G6 system. So the Dexcom G6 is a continuous glucose monitor. It's made up of 3 components. So that's the sensor, the transmitter, and a wireless display device, which can be either the Dexcom's own receiver or a compatible mobile device. The sensor is inserted just underneath the skin. It's a simple one-touch application, and the sensor measures interstitial glucose levels. The transmitter sits on top of the sensor, and it's really the brains of the operation. And it sends the data wirelessly to the display device, whichever one you might be using at that time. And then on your display device, then you'll have a real-time data set to get continuous glucose levels and a really proactive way of managing your glucose levels throughout your day. What the Dexcom can really do for you is kind of laid out here. Again, it's a real-time glucose reading every 5 minutes straight to your wireless device. The Dexcom sensor is worn for 10 days without needing to change. And really, kind of the bread and butter of the Dexcom system is a proactive way of managing diabetes. It's helping you take action earlier to avoid high and low glucose values and spend as much time as possible inside your target range. The Dexcom is extremely accurate and dependable as well, with no finger sticks needed to make diabetes treatment decisions, as well as no finger sticks needed to calibrate the system as well. It also lets you share readings with loved ones with our Share and Follow app, and it helps you identify trends and patterns in your glucose over time. So just to break down the different apps that are available on a mobile device. So the first 2 apps are for the primary user. There's the Dexcom G6 app, which is for the person wearing the Dexcom. It shows your glucose information on that device. It is directly connected to your Dexcom sensor, as long as you're within Bluetooth range, and it gives you your alerts, alarms, and trend data. The Dexcom Clarity app is also for the person that's wearing the Dexcom G6. It lets you review key metrics, create reports, and allows automated remote data sharing with your diabetes clinic as well. And then lastly, we've got the Dexcom Follow app. And so the Follow app is actually for anyone that would like to follow the primary user's glucose information. So that'd be parents, spouse, caregivers, anyone that would like to be involved in the day-to-day and get access to live readings as well, to view and follow the trends of a loved one. So what's on over the next few days? We've got some great sessions planned for you, a series of sessions to give you a lot more information about the Dexcom in general and everything that's happening with the company and how you can get involved. As well as this, you can always reach out to us with any questions by email. And so for details, there's our Dexcom sponsor page. You can always go and visit our website as well that has a lot of great resources, materials, and contact information for us as well. So to give you a little agenda there, on Friday afternoon today at 1 p.m., we've got a more in-depth Dexcom G6 overview, and we'll be introducing our Hello Dexcom program. Tomorrow at the same time, 1 p.m. kickoff, we'll have our Dexcom warrior Nina talking about life with her son that lives with type 1 diabetes. And on Sunday to, I guess, close up shop already, it's going to fly by, guys. We've got our Dexcom Q&A session with myself, my colleague Susan, and a few of our fantastic technical support representatives. And we'll be talking a bit more about our Dexcom warrior community and how you can get involved and become a warrior yourself. So just to finish up right on the 5-minute dot, just again, you can always go and get support for anything that you might need if you wear the Dexcom now, or if you're just interested in learning more at our website, you can contact us from there. You can also go to the sponsor page here through the T1 Today website as well. I look forward to seeing everyone on the sessions. Thank you so much.
I've got to say, James, 5 minutes, 2 seconds. That was very impressive timing there. Using it every second. So yeah, thank you for that excellent overview. So now we're going to move on to Karen, who's coming in for Insulate. But before Karen starts, I just want to say thanks. Some really good questions coming in here. So just keep them coming and we'll try and work through them when we finish. So Insulate and Karen, thank you.
Hi, I've got tough timings to follow then. I just want to check with Glenn. Shall I share my own presentation? Is that better? Is that okay? Do you see that okay?
Yeah, happy
that's
you
fine.
shared,
that's
Karen.
fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Fab. Okay, and again, thank you for having us here. Myself and my colleague Kerry are on the conference this weekend. So just to tell you in 5 minutes a wee bit about the Omnipod system. So we work for Insulate, who are the manufacturers of the Omnipod system. So Insulate are the pioneers of patch pump technology, and it was all because of a father whose son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes that Omnipod came about back in the year 2000. And he didn't want to accept the treatment options that they were offered at that time for his son, which was injecting multiple times a day or a tethered pump. So he was fortunate, he was already an engineer within the medtech industry, so he got together with some colleagues, and within 9 months they took Omnipod from a napkin sketch to a prototype. So it has been around since 2000, and that passion to simplify and improve treatment for people with diabetes still very much exists at Insulate today. So just thinking about a few reasons why people choose to switch from multiple daily injections to the Omnipod system. So they want better blood glucose control, they want more freedom in their daily life, and they're tired of injections. So you can see here, this is the Omnipod, so it's a really small, light, tubeless, waterproof pod. And you wear it on your body and it gets changed every 3 days. So it means one injection every 3 days versus your multiple daily injections. So, and it also has a hands-free auto cannula insertion, meaning that you never have to see or touch the needle. And because it's automated, the cannula goes in at a consistent depth and angle every time, meaning you've got optimum insulin absorption. So there's no room for user error there. So tubeless flexibility is one of the reasons that people choose the Omnipod system over other insulin pumps. So the tubeless design means that people with diabetes can live their life without considering their tube, so they don't have to think about what they're wearing. They can play sports, they can be active, they can live their life without having to think about their tube. They also choose it because it's very easy to use. It's really simple. It's simple to teach. It's simple to learn. You can see here that the Omnipod Dash system is two parts. It's the pod and it's the controller, which we call the Personal Diabetes Manager, or the PDM. So these communicate via Bluetooth wireless technology to deliver your continuous insulin infusion. It's a really, really simple system. They also choose it because it's fully waterproof. So there's no need to disconnect, to shower, to have a bath. People can swim, do water sports without disconnecting and disrupting their insulin delivery. And people trust Omnipod to manage their diabetes. So we see here that the pod is worn anywhere on the body that you would normally inject, including the arms and the legs. So because it's tubeless, it allows you to use a variety of these sites, including the arms and legs. And you don't even need to remember the last few places that you've worn it. The PDM has a built-in side pod tracker that remembers for you, so it allows you to rotate really well for optimal absorption and good skin health. So 3 steps to setting it up. I'm going to show you a wee video now, just to show you how simple it is.
Simplify your life with pod therapy.
The Omnipod Dash insulin management system is simple and discreet, consisting of just 2 primary parts: a tubeless waterproof pod and a touchscreen personal diabetes manager, known as the PDM. Simplicity is just the start of it. The Omnipod Dash pod is discreet, lightweight, tubeless and waterproof, and can provide up to 72 hours of continuous insulin delivery. It contains a small, flexible cannula that inserts automatically. You'll never see it and barely feel it. The pod can be worn anywhere insulin would usually be injected and allows you to free yourself from daily injections, tubing and wardrobe compromises. You can stay connected to your basal insulin delivery and your favourite activities. Run, swim, play, and simply enjoy life. All controlled with a few finger taps from the convenient Omnipod Dash PDM. The Omnipod Dash PDM is discreet, intuitive, and easy to use. With familiar smartphone-like technology, just tap a few buttons on the Omnipod Dash PDM and your bolus insulin is delivered. And with a built-in bolus calculator, you can spend less time on maths and more time enjoying meals, more time enjoying exercise, more time with friends and family, more time just being you. The Omnipod Dash system.
I'm going to be the one on the naughty step. I've gone over 5 minutes. So thank you for listening to that. And Kerry and I are around all weekend. So please come and see us. We'd love to tell you more about Omnipod and the support programme that we offer, and about our 90-day money back promise.
Okay, thanks for that, Karen. You'll need to either thank Nikki or Tom for borrowing some of either Abbott or Advanced Therapeutics time there, but because we're ahead of time, we can run with that ball. And last but not least then, thanks for that, we're going to bring up Simon from Air Liquide Tandem to give us a 5-minute chat and update on their recent advances. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to the whole team for keeping everything running and keeping us virtual. So can you put up my slides, please? Fabulous, thank you. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of Air Liquide and our setup, and then some recent data from the Control-IQ algorithm. So if you can pop onto the next slide, just to explain to people, Air Liquide is if you type it into Google, we're an industrial kind of gases company, but we do have a large proportion of our business in healthcare as well, some specialty healthcare sectors, oxygen supply to patients' homes in the UK, and now for the past 3 years in diabetes. Thank you. On to the next one. This is how we're set up. So we have head office in Droitwich. We do all our warehousing out of a site in Wolverhampton, and we've got a customer care centre up in South Shields in the northeast, which runs 24 hours a day, every day. And as you can see, it's a sizable company with 65,000 employees worldwide. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, the top line on what Control IQ technology is and what it consists of. So Control IQ is an advanced hybrid closed loop system. It's designed to keep the patient in range, so that range of 3.9 to 10 millimoles as measured by the CGM system, and it adjusts the insulin based on a 30-minute predicted value from the Dexcom CGM system. So the components are the T-Slim insulin pump, which has been around, as I said, for 3 years now. So it's a very nice, small, compact pump with a color touch screen, very easy to use. It's got the algorithm embedded in it. We started with Basal IQ, we've now moved to Control IQ, and it runs with the Dexcom CGM system. Next slide, please. So how does it work? It looks at those CGM values and it takes in all the other variables that are coming into the pump, such as the IOB, etc., and the data that's coming from the CGM system, and it's looking 30 minutes in the future to adjust the insulin accordingly. It still uses the patient's profile as well, so it has kind of a baseline to work from. So it will still be using their carb ratio and their correction factors as inputs into the algorithm, as well as picking up on the total daily insulin that's being used by the patient. Next slide, please. So this gives an overview of what the algorithm is doing. So in the middle line here, when you're looking at the maintain section, it's keeping the user between the 6.25 and 8.9 range. If they move down below 6.3, it then starts reducing the basal insulin and modulates that. But then if it needs to, if the patient drops below 3.9, it'll also stop the insulin. So that was like the early PLGS systems. But then on the upside, when the patient moves to a higher number, up at 8.9, it modulates and increases the insulin being delivered. And then if needed to, it will give a correction bolus if the user goes above 10. What you can see then in the additional columns is we have a slightly tighter range that's used overnight in the sleep activity and a wider range that's used for exercise activity, which the user can just switch on and off as needed. Thank you. Next slide. This was the data that came from the early study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, showing the time in range and also showing the additional 2.6 hours per day that users were staying in range. So that was the initial kind of results. If we can move on to the next slide. And to the next one, please. So what this looked at, the clinical trial endpoints, was that time in range importantly, but in the middle here also the low percentage of time spent below 3.9, and importantly as well here, the percentage of time people spent in the closed loop system. On to the next slide, I'll just run through the data here that we're going to look at. Sorry, on to the next slide, thank you, is the real world data. So this is not the clinical trial. This is now pulling data from the software system that's used in the US where patients upload their data. So a bit like their version of Diasend. Over 9,000 users have been putting their data in for a period of time now, so 12 consecutive months. So that gives us a real indication of what it's doing every day. So if you can move on to the next slide, thank you. And as you can see here, this was the improvement we got from baseline up to that 75% within that 2-week period. But what the real world data is showing us is that is maintained through the 1, 3, and 6 months up to 12 months. They are keeping that. So it's not just a nice increase at the beginning, they are maintaining that time in range. Next slide, please. And what this shows on this slide, importantly, is breaking it down into the different age groups. It's more of a challenge with the smaller people to keep them time in range. But as you can see here, the 6 to 13 and the 14 to 18-year-old age ranges are still getting that increase, and that is maintained across that time frame as well at 12 months. So the conclusions here, all the age groups experienced improvements in their time in range. They exceeded the consensus guidelines for sensor time spent in range. It was immediate, but it was also sustained, and that's the important part here. 94% of the study saw that time in automation and saw no significant change there. and the sensor time, one of the other important things, the overnight control using that sleep activity between 4 and 7 reflects how that function is working. And I think there's a last slide and a thank you. On to the next one. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Actually, most of you behaved well there. Well done. Thanks to everybody for keeping at least under 6 minutes. So that was a great overview of where we're at with the 5 different companies. So as I say, thank you very much for that. Got lots of questions coming in, and we'll try and work through them in a sort of systematic way. And there's a few of them that are quite grouped. So I think we'll maybe take them in order first of all, and then we'll try and pick on some of the individual ones if that's all right. So James, quite a few queries coming in about, we've heard about it, when's it coming to the UK, the Dexcom G7, any comment on that?
Yeah, thanks. Unfortunately, no, it doesn't have its CE marking yet, so not really able to talk about it at the moment. You know, from what you can find online is probably what you're going to find. So, you know, you can see what's there, but I highly encourage everyone to follow Dexcom UK on social media, and any updates will probably be released through there.
Okay, so I think that covered about 8 of the questions, so that's good. Yeah, I think in fairness to our sponsors, we need to be mindful that there are regulations that can cover what can and can't necessarily be discussed. But thanks for that. So bottom line, keep an eye on social media. I don't know if this is also the same for Karen and Kerry from Insulet talking about Omnipod. There's quite a lot of questions coming in about closed loop systems and looking to see when that functionality will be available.
Yeah, so yeah, it's innovation in our pipeline. We're very excited about it to come, but exactly as James says, it's not CE marked as yet in this country, so it's not something that we are allowed to talk about, and Google can tell you more about Omnipod 5 than we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a recurring theme, isn't it? This interoperability, this option of choice, and people being able to choose between different sensors and different pumps, and how we ensure that we're getting that interoperability. I'll take a few more questions and then maybe a couple more thoughts. So, Nikki, on that note, in terms of Libre 2, John's quite rightly highlighted that it's got FDA approval with interoperability. Any progress there in terms of Libre 2, or indeed, dare I say, Libre 3, having that interoperability and closed loop functionality?
Unfortunately, Brian, it's just the same as everybody else said. That's obviously it's slightly above my pay grade to be able to discuss that at the minute, but I fully understand we are all working on it behind there, and the fact that it's got the approval in the US will certainly help us to fight our cause over here as well.
Yeah, and John, on that note, because I think you'd asked me about the various CE marking and things like that. So I think we need to be realistic. Quite a lot of people on the call will already have an access to these technologies, although I noticed that Maureen in the questions had asked about, you know, how do you get access to these devices if sugars are running high or uncontrollable. So there are an awful lot of people out there in the UK who obviously aren't on pump technologies, but that wouldn't preclude them getting access to glucose sensors. We have to be mindful about pumps and not to be overly paternalistic, but there is a degree of risk with pumps in terms of they only produce short-acting insulin. So if diabetes control is high and challenging, then there's always a worry that without background insulin, then you can run into risk of DKA, which is why most clinical teams would want to see a good understanding of carb count and insulin dose adjustment and things like that before they would move somebody forward for insulin pump therapy. But that shouldn't necessarily preclude access to glucose monitoring systems, and hopefully that answers that question. John, in answer to your question about the CE marking, well, actually probably more worryingly so than the UK, as I'm sure everybody's aware, will be going for CA marking. And I know there's quite a lot of concerns that the standards for CA marking might even be below CE. But I suppose we would hope that ultimately those quality assurances are there, and that they will have that interoperability to moving forward. I think that's what we should be looking for. I think as a diabetes community, we should be driving both glucose sensor companies and pump companies to make sure they've got as much interoperability as possible. On that note, I'm going to come to Tom. There's a question came in about the CAM APS system in terms of, so I've got 3 quick questions if you like. The 2 that were posted were It could be followed by parents. Can it be followed by parents? What's the functionality with a smartwatch? And my question would be about interoperability. Obviously, the Dyna pumps with a Dexcom G6 at present. Is there any other thoughts about interoperability with other systems? So a few to ponder there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So if I answer them in order, currently the ability to follow is based through Diasend and text alerts coming from CAM APS. I know that in the pipeline, again, there's lots of pipeline talk, but in the pipeline, the Dexcom Follow app and system is planned, and as I understand it, relatively imminent. And that obviously will allow remote monitoring and alarms to come through via internet connection that's necessary on both devices, both the CAM APS home device and any follower devices. For the time being, again, an internet connection is necessary across both devices or all devices, but you can get nearly real-time data via Diasend apps. And if you wanted alarms to come through, we can set up text alerts, as I mentioned. So that's how you would follow on from somebody using CAM APS. With regards to smart watches and other devices, I think all of these things are in the conversation, and all things are possible. However, for the time being, at least, we do have some restrictions when it comes to CAM APS. It must be housed on an Android device, and currently it's distributed, the app itself, via the Amazon App Store rather than the Google Play Store. That changes things a little bit in terms of what devices can and can't be used. So I would say all things are possible, all things are looked into, as you may imagine. But for the time being, there is nothing coming in terms of smartwatch connectivity for CAM APS specifically, as far as I'm aware. I know that Dexcom Follow may enable smartwatch following when that arrives for us. So there is that, but no remote controlling, I don't think. And then, sorry, Brian, could you just remind me of that third question?
The final one was about the sort of pipeline for interoperability. Yeah,
of course. So we're quite proud of the fact that we are interoperable. We're known as an interoperable pump. In America, the FDA approval process that we're going through puts us as the currently only interoperable pump available. The problem that we find ourselves in is it's all well and good being an interoperable pump, but the economy of devices isn't quite there yet to have lots of bridging communication. So the Dexcom G6 in this country, as we mentioned earlier, with Libra and its ICGM FDA approval, but not CE marking, we need other devices to be in that ecosystem to connect with. And for the time being, at least, the Dexcom is the only system licensed to dose insulin off of the results. So that's the system that we need to go with for the moment. But we are, as a company, really insistent on this interoperable ecosystem that we find ourselves in, and we're more than happy to work with as many different devices as possible.
Yeah, thanks for that. Simon, just questions come in about the ability to influence your sugars in your in the system. Now, this is probably a good point, because there's good evidence that when you're on a closed loop system, the more you leave it to run the algorithms and do its own thing, the better control you get. And the more you try and override it and interfere, the worse your control. So I don't know what your thoughts are about the ability to individualize targets and whether it's preferable, but in answering that question that's come up, have you got any thoughts?
And it's a regular question in terms of, as soon as people see the kind of way the system is set up, to say, can I change that? And no, there isn't any plans to change those kind of limits and where it's set. But you're right, we have then found with a lot of users, there is actually no need. It keeps, they keep in range and keep to where they want to be. Some people do want to run tighter, but actually overall, it's as good a result. And the time in range, and what we're probably all talking about here, is reducing the burden of diabetes, and the amount of brain power you have to put into it is the major benefit.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a key lesson, isn't it? As these technologies are improving, we get more closed loops or DIY loops. The take-home message seems to be, although it might be difficult, particularly if you've had diabetes a long time, you almost need to let the technologies run with the ball and sort it out from themselves. And the more you try and second guess them, the more you tend to run into problems. It'd be interesting to maybe pick that up in some of the hallway discussion or chat with the sponsors for people who've got that real lived experience, because undoubtedly more people on this call will have better understanding than that than most of us who are presenting and speaking today. Just a this is a very specific query, I think, to Karen and Kerry. It was about changing your Omnipod in the middle of your 4-year warranty period. I don't know if you're in a position to comment on that. I'm assuming it would be a discussion with their healthcare team.
Yeah, absolutely. So Omnipod is a bit different in that there's no 4-year tie-in with Omnipod. So if you're within the 4 years of the EROS, like Brian said, that would be a discussion with your healthcare provider. So there's 2 ways to do it. So it means getting a new PDM, which is a minimal cost. So it would be up to your clinic whether they were willing or able to pay for that. And if not, we have added the function where, with your healthcare professional's consent, patients can pay to upgrade themselves onto Dash.
That's great, thank you for that. And Nikki, another one that's come in is talking about, a lot of Libre users, well, particularly before Libre 2 actually, were using things like Meow Meow to help run DIY looping with Night Scout and things. There was a query about whether there's going to be a specific follow-up for Libre. I don't know if you can comment on that.
Obviously, we've got Libre link up, but in terms of the closed loop stuff, Brian, we can't comment on anything up for the minute because obviously we're out with license where that stands, but there is work obviously ongoing on it all.
Yeah, that's
apologies, can't be any more specific.
I quite like this. We should have had a closing slide that said, all sponsors said, can't talk about that, but watch this space. I think that's
apologies.
I think that is the exciting thing, though. There's lots of developments in this area, and I think that can only be a good thing for people living with diabetes. I'm conscious that we only have a couple of minutes left, so just a couple of concluding thoughts. I'm glad I didn't have to hold the jackets there and there was no infighting between companies, because I think that's really important as a diabetes community. I think as a diabetes community, we need to be working hand in glove to make sure that we've got diabetes technologies firmly placed within the management strategy for people with diabetes, so that we as one voice, whether it be persons with diabetes, families, carers, healthcare professionals or industry, are all saying this is a rapidly evolving field and we should be ensuring timely access to the right technology at the right time for the right individual. And I'm glad that actually I think diabetes industry partners don't necessarily get involved in that bun fight as to which pump or which sensor, and they realise that choice is important. And I think the more that we can just sing from that one script, if you like, as a diabetes community, then the better chance we've got of getting payers to fund this. And to conclude, there was a comment there about if my daughter moved on to CGM and got higher percentage of time in range, what does that mean? Well, at a diabetes clinic, we always bang on about HbA1c and we always bang on about long-term complications. But I think increasingly, and again, the people on the call will know this better than me, it's about quality of life. It's about not losing a day of your life chasing your lows and chasing your highs. It's about being able to sit your exams and not worry that your blood sugar is going to be 23 because you're stressed out your box and things like that. So I think the technologies, we sometimes get too hung up about HbA1c reduction and things like that, and maybe actually we should try and highlight the quality of life aspect more than anything else. But I'm just going to finish by thanking everybody who's contributed, both the sponsors, the speakers, and more importantly, the attendees for their excellent questions. We've not been able to cover every one of them, but hopefully we've covered most of them. And I don't know if Emma's got any concluding thoughts or comments.
I absolutely do. I personally found all of those talks very interesting. I'm very sorry that I can't be going to each of the booths and speaking with you all in person, in live, but I'm sure we'll be doing that next year. I have a 12-year-old now, type 1 diabetic son, and we've been coming to the conferences every year since he was diagnosed 6 years ago, something like that. And each year I find, the developments that it's moving so fast. So I found this session especially very interesting, as I do each year, because you just learn what's coming, what's happening, and it's really important, I think, for us to know what options we have. So I found those very interesting. So a very, very big thank you to Brian and to Nikki, Tom, James, Karen, Simon. I hope I haven't missed anyone. And I'd like to thank everyone else who's attended the talks today and encourage you all to please do visit the sponsor booths on the website. And there's a link there for the live sponsor hours as well, so the individual companies. So a huge thank you to everyone. Thank you ever so much.
Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the conference, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye. Bye.